a little after 7 o'clock, if we're ready to roll. This is the Planning Board meeting of February 8th, 2022. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Let me just go around the table. If everybody could please sign into the sign-in sheet that's on the back table there. And I just want to say we have with us tonight a new interim town planner, Tom Bott. And I think he'll be speaking later on in the evening. Or did you want to say something now, Tom?
At the chair's discretion, I'll be happy to talk a little bit during the planning director's report.
Okay, thank you. So just to go around, if everybody could please talk into their microphones tonight, make themselves heard. The notes for the meeting are going to be taken from the video. Let me just go around. We have Andy Glines from Fuss & O'Neill here. We have Tom Bott, our planner. We have Connie Shea. John Gatsky is not here tonight. You have me, Bruce Mackey. You have Kevin Robinson and Ellen Cedillo and Rich Dion. So the first thing we have tonight on the agenda is an A&R. And it's to create two unbuildable parcels from Lot 2 for conveyance to Lot 11, Map 58, Lot 2, and Lot 11-0. It's at 28 Fosdick Road, and this is for discussion and possible vote. And I did look at these tonight, or this afternoon, and it looked like a pretty simple A&R. It was just taking out two small parcels. It looked like there was a shed and a swimming pool that was over the property lines, and you're just capturing the shed and the pool and adding that to the parcel that fronts the street. But if you would like to speak about it, if you give us your name and...
Sure. Brian Grady, GAF Engineering. That was a very good summary. There's an erratic rear property line. We're just trying to straighten that out, and part of the purpose is they're reconstructing that pool, which is over the property line. That property is owned by Johnson Cranberry, but the pool will go with the house owned by Mr. Johnson. So it's same ownership for the most part, but it is on a different lot.
All right. Any questions by any of the planning board members?
No, but I would put in a reminder that if the pool is within 100 feet of the wetland zone, that you'll have to go through Concom.
Yes, we will be preparing an application for conservation.
All right. Is there anything that you would like to say about this, Tom, or?
No, I did prepare a memo for the board. As you know, I'm new here. I know that A&Rs are the easy, well, I should say all the easy A&Rs have been done. What we have now are the ones that people are trying to build something on. But in this case, where you've got two parcels, they're being carved off the adjacent parcel. The thing I always want to look at is the parcel that's sending them somewhere else, is it going to remain conforming? But it's a giant cranberry bog, so there's not an issue with that. Because they're, and the technical definition of a lot is a parcel you can build on. So when someone calls something a parcel, it's by definition not buildable. There's a note in the footnotes that says we're creating these two parcels that are not considered to be buildable. But it's certainly within the board's ability to note that in their motion. So the motion I put together for you that you may or may not use basically moves to endorse the A&R plan, and if the planning board wanted to use either of the two potential motions, that the planning board's endorsement is not a determination of conformance with the zoning regulations, and that parcel A and B are not buildable lots as currently configured. That's strictly up to the board. But I'm a belt and suspenders kind of guy. I'm actually wearing suspenders today. So it's the board's discretion, but it's perfectly appropriate. It's meets the bylaw, meets the requirements of an A&R plan. It's just fine.
All right, would anybody like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the A&R plan for 28 Fosbrook Road as presented with the proposed motions by Mr. Thomas Bott.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Let's, yeah, since this is done by video, let's take a round of roll vote. So if we could start with Mr. Shea.
Cornelius Shea says aye.
Bruce Mackey, aye.
Kevin Robinson, aye.
Ellen Sodillo, aye.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We do have the Mylar here.
I have a revised Mylar.
Oh, you have, okay.
Yeah.
And we can sign that. I don't know how many, do you need to be signed, just one?
Well, just to sign the Mylar, and I have some copies of the plan if you'd like them for your file.
Yeah, if you don't mind leaving them with us, and you can pick them up tomorrow, does that work for you? Or does the board usually sign them at the meeting and send them home?
We can sign it right now if you
Sure,
want.
okay.
Yeah, if you like. If you could just put it at the back table and we'll.
That'd be swell. Let's take 3. One to give, one to share, and one to lose.
Okay, that's great now. So date is 2/8. All right, so, and then we can sign the, at the end of the meeting, we can sign the copies. Next, we have some public hearings that are being continued, and one is the application of Richard De Benedictis, B.E., requesting a special permit and site plan review, and this is for Jellystone Park.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Did you want to mention anything about the doggy daycare being continued for folks who may be
Oh,
here for
okay,
that?
yeah, I did. I did see one lady come in here and for the doggy daycare, but yeah, number 3 on the public hearings, we have with Carrie Galbraith requesting a special permit for a doggy daycare, and that was on 72 North Main Street, and we are going to, well, I suppose we can vote on this tonight. So we're going to continue this to February 22nd at 7 o'clock. Because we want to look at it a little more closely. So if I could have a motion to continue this to February 22nd at 7 o'clock, the application of Carrie Galbraith at 72 North Main Street.
I'll make that said motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so, okay, let's take a vote on that.
Cornelius Shea says aye.
Bruce Mackey, aye.
Kevin Robinson, aye.
Ellen Sordillo, aye.
Okay. All right, so that takes care of that. Okay, so we'll go back to the application of Richard De Benedictis for Jellystone Park.
You want me to put that plan up on the?
Yes, we do, since our new interim town planner, Tom Bott here says he can put it up on the screen for us. And if you like, that may work out.
The
even
plan,
better.
the only plan I've seen from you, I have on a PDF, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen. How you been, Dave?
Okay, well, we did a couple of new sheets. Well, first of all, I'm Dick De Benedictis from Plymouth, Mass. Working with Webby Engineering and Northgate Resorts and trying to get this Jellystone Park improvements completed. The plan you see now, there's 3 sheets there. It has to do with the hydrants that we added. We promised we would add hydrants. So we've added, I believe the number is 11. There's 5 in one area, 6 in another. Also, we have a detail sheet showing the hydrants. So Andy hasn't seen these except on the internet probably today when I sent it to him. And we also have the water gates or the water shutoffs that we talked about in the last hearing on those 3 sheets. So those are in addition to the sheets that are on the other side of this board here. Let's see what Tom can do over here. I also took some time today to respond to a lot of the comments that Andy made the other day and just go over them. I've sent them as email to, I believe, Tom, Andrew, and Bruce, but I didn't know the other emails. But I do have hard copies here if anybody wants to look at them. I only have 3, but we can go over them if you'd like to do that. Basically, a number of these are comments that Andrew made that we totally agree with, and we've talked about them over the last few weeks. And as I did, I noted items that we obviously agree with, and that some of which we believe can be conditions. Other items are noted by Andrew as being potential waivers that the board has to rule on. And we have, as I say, I have 3 copies of this, if anybody wants a copy.
So if I may, we made copies of your responses for the board.
Oh, you did?
We also scanned them and put them on the screen so you
Great.
can.
Okay. We advanced some since Kingston, huh?
They have electricity here.
Yeah, Tom and I have been involved for many years when we were both in Kingston on major projects.
I was going to say, this is your one chance to tell the people they made a terrible mistake leaving them in the building, but after that, you got to just work with me, okay?
Well, okay, so what we'd like to, it's really up to the board. Would we like to go over Andrew's comments? I have my copy here, and I don't know if you have a copy. And we can go off the screen that Tom has over there. Okay, the first page is just the number of items that we've provided to the board, so they're not really comments as such. But the second page deals with the zoning bylaws, and what it says is the first item was definitions, and it just says the existing and proposed project site meets the definition of commercial industrial campground with components of a commercial recreation outdoors use. That's that's the basis by which we started our design. There isn't really an item that just calls out campgrounds in your zoning bylaws. So we had to go under commercial recreational campground or commercial recreational zoning. Coordination with the fire department. As for the site access and all that, I haven't had a chance to talk to Jeff yet. I wanted to prepare the plan first, and I'll be trying to get in touch with him tomorrow. I believe we've provided what most towns want, hydrants within 500 feet. The water gates are really to be able to shut off certain sections of the site, so that it's kind of related to the fire department, but it's also related to just maintaining the site. So we show those water gates. As far as the principal use, it's a recreational campground, and it's permitted under the planning board under section 5300. And it should be noted that commercial recreational campground is an existing use, and the proposed campsite expansion, building construction, and additions are consistent with the existing use. And of course, everybody in this room, I believe, knows, excuse me, that it was Shady Acres for some 40 years, and this is just an upgrade of a campground that was well known and well liked, but it had septic systems and it had wells that didn't necessarily meet all the requirements of today's regulations, but they did perform well for years, and we're going to be adding 3 to 5 new wells of low yield, but they'll provide a definite centralized water system. So we agree. I put agreed, but it's basically that's obvious. We were asked to provide some elevations of the proposed buildings, and I believe the client was represented by Mr. Rob Kraus, sitting behind me here. I believe they provided some, maybe all. I don't know. Were they all provided? Yes. I believe they were all provided. And provide the zoning table from the zoning bylaws. Well, I'm not sure whether we put that into our engineering report or not. But the planning board, the next section 2330, the planning board shall include findings for the section within the decision letter. And Andrew says he doesn't have any, or Fuss and O'Neill does not have any concerns with the building placement in regards to causing danger from fire. However, Fuss and O'Neill defers to the building official, obviously, to make a final determination, and we agree with that, obviously. Fuss and O'Neill does not have any concerns with the emergency access. However, Fuss and O'Neill defers to the fire department, which would be proper, and we agree. Fuss and O'Neill does not have any, section 2333, provide clarification on pedestrian routes from buildings to the required parking facilities. Well, the buildings basically, they haven't been marked out. The parking isn't marked out, but it's pretty obvious where the parking areas are. And obviously, if as a condition you want them marked, that's what we'll do. So. Another section of 2333 is provide clarification on pedestrian routes from buildings to the required parking facilities. Now, in a campground, pedestrian access is usually on the roadways or the pathways or the trails, whatever you want to call them. They're not full roadways. They're not paved. These are going to be stone and gravel. But they kind of are created by the way people operate within a campground. A lot of these people have golf carts and so on, but it would be difficult for us to create pathways that we don't know whether they would actually be used that way. You pretty much have to use, I mean, any campground that I've ever been to, you walk along the roadway because it's not really a traffic way. So we could create that once everything is in place, but I think you have to wait to see how everything works. And basically, the other issue is we have camp sites that are 40 by 60, so we don't want trails going for pedestrian walking through one campsite to another campsite. So it has to pretty much be on the roadway, or I would prefer to call them pathways. So, the next section, 3130, applicant shall confirm where new utility poles are proposed. Now, we have a company, electrical engineering and electrical construction company, putting that together. And that's not in full force right now, but that will be pretty soon. But what's going to happen is we're increasing the power input into the park to a 3-phase from what is now a 1-phase, and all of the sites will have at least a 50 kilowatt basis, and they will be they will be feeding each campsite with panels, so that somebody using a campsite will have an actual panel that they hook into, just like they would for the water and sewer. And that's the key to the whole thing. This is not going to be haphazard. You know, you got to go find the electric, you got to go find the water or the sewer, or have a dump site. This is going to have, obviously, a sewerage system that goes to a wastewater treatment plant. That's going to be very sophisticated. And so we have those kind of things happening. So the utility poles will be something that we'll have to work with once we get the final engineering between the electric company and Eversource. And we had an original item that Andrew had about, or it's in the bylaws, that you measure every 10-inch caliper tree or better, and that isn't really the mode of the way we're operating. We're basically going to be planting a lot of trees rather than we've cleared out all the minor trees, and we've tried to flatten out the site so we don't have erosion on roadways. So that's already in the plan. I should say, if you want to stop me on anything here and ask me a question, please do.
I had a parking
Sure.
question that goes back to the one before.
Sure.
I know that you don't plan on opening the water park to the public, but the ice cream store, do you have adequate parking for that, and will that be marked? Because I do believe
well,
that's probably going to be open to the public, right?
Yes, we will have, there's a parking space just to the west of the miniature golf that's there and the ice cream store. And we can mark those out, yes. Right now, I think there's like some railroad ties out there.
Right.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we could mark them out a little bit.
There's
All right.
also a mini golf course there that
Yes.
people will be accessing, so the parking as you're facing the ice cream shop is to the left, and it's a wide open area right now.
Okay.
So just,
But are those open to the public? I mean, for people just to drive up and get ice cream? Or is that just open for the people that at the campground?
I'll leave that to Rob to answer.
I think for the most part, for the people's campground.
Yeah,
I don't know how many people would come off
Right.
right,
the
I don't-
grounds to go to the ice cream shop.
okay. And the same with the, what'd you say, mini golf that you have there?
Yeah, the mini golf's not, it's part
That's
of
for,
the package. When you go, we don't charge for the mini golf or anything. That's what, it's more for the people that are.
at the campground,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I
Unless
just
you were
wanted
a
to
camper-
clarify
unless-
that, yeah.
Yeah, unless you were a camper there, you probably wouldn't know it was there. You know, I
Right.
mean, in the past, if you had been there in the past,
Right.
Are you considering having the ice cream shop open to the public, though?
I'm not sure what operations is thinking about that. There might have been some discussion, but I don't think that's a steadfast thing that they want to do.
yeah.
Is that something you wouldn't want to see, or?
No, I just want to make sure that you had adequate parking for it.
Yeah, there's probably spaces, I would say there's about 10 spaces on that left side there, on the westerly side. So I don't think you, and plus beyond that, there's a big open area going towards where the RVs are parked. You know, that whole area has been opened up so that you could have parking. Right now, the construction equipment is staged there.
Yeah, I
So-
recall seeing that when I
Right,
were on the
and there's
sidewalk.
quite a few vehicles.
I'm sure that we could probably
Construction.
put 5 to 30 parking spots in that whole
Yeah.
area in there.
Sure.
Okay.
If you are going to open that to the public, the ice cream, I recommend dedicating the parking spaces as required. I don't think it's very big, but I think a couple parking spaces will need to be dedicated to the ice cream place.
Okay, if we go on to the water park, which there's been some talk about, that's now on the plan in that space that we showed you originally. The water park won't be constructed until Phase 2, which is next year after this phase has gone through its season. And I believe, let's see. Okay, operation hours, I think that a valid thing to discuss, and that could be, easily negotiated, I'm sure. I assume that will be, that'll be park people, so there'll probably be hours of recreation, noise, whatever, for the whole park, as far as, how it's
We
going.
don't put lights in for swimming pools or anything like that. Most of the pools that we have are closed down by 8 to 9 o'clock. So we don't encourage anybody to stay out there when it's dark around anyway, so.
Could you be more specific on what hours you were looking for the water park?
I don't know the exact hours right now.
All right.
Now, the next has to do with the lighting, and I don't think we've given this a lot of thought yet. I think we want to see what the place looks like once the poles are up, once the buildings are up that are additional, and where it's going to need lighting. I mean, we can guess and we can do all kinds of studies, but I think there's, again, we're in a campground, we're not in a shopping center, so you don't have to light the whole place. It's just a matter of lighting accessible places that you'd be walking to at night. So I don't think we firmed that up yet, unless Rob has something on that. So obviously, we'll work with Fuss and O'Neill when we determine that situation. Also, let's see. And Fuss and O'Neill is recommending that be a condition, which I think is a proper thing to do, because I think that's something that you have to look at down the line once you see everything in its place. Again, a shopping center is different. You're trying to see how much light you need to light up the whole place or whatever. Okay.
And what kind of heights were we looking at for the lights?
Well, they're going to be probably building mounted lights. We don't really have any ideas for pole mounted lights, but if we do, they're probably going to be like 10-foot poles, where we've done in the past.
Okay, what's our maximum is 18 feet?
It's 20 for parking lot pole mounted, and then 16 for building mounted
Okay.
or wall pack.
Thank you, Andy.
And of course, in a campground, you don't want a lot of light. The whole ambiance of a campground is to have darkened areas and, not feeling like you're in the city. So I don't think that'll be an enthusiastic part of the design. Let's see.
Question?
Sure.
So the lighting that we're discussing here is lighting for the parking lot specifically?
There'll be there'll be some lighting for the parking lot, but I think primarily what Andrew was looking at was we have some buildings that are being expanded and some that are being, like there's laundry and I think there's a shower room in one end. It's on the plan. Just, lighting for people to know where they're going, to have access to the facilities. So most of them will be building mounted.
Because oftentimes in a place like this, you want more pedestrian scale lighting, just to light sort of the
Right.
pathways.
Yeah, that's
Bollard sort of lighting along walkways and things like that. There's going to be underground utilities, the electricity is going to be
Yeah.
underground, or is it going to be?
for the most part, they're underground. Once there will be some poles. I haven't seen the design for, that the electrical engineers have come up with. As they say, they're dealing directly with Eversource, but there will be some poles, and then it'll be underground to all the campsites themselves. Again, the campsites are a specific area, 40 by 60, so they're like a little lot that, when you're camping here, that's your area. You're not next to somebody else's campsite camper or RV, like the way it's been in the past. I don't know if you've been there before, Tom. but you'd have an RV right next to another one, and, you know, just about room to get by it. That's not gonna happen anymore. This is gonna be wide open.
Well, there's amazing things done with lighting these days with, you know, obviously LED lighting, full cutoff fixtures. There's motion detectors as well.
Oh, sure.
That will basically, the light will glow low, but if someone approaches it with a motion detector, the light will come up. It saves energy, it saves the nightscape. And those are all the sort of things you should consider in looking at a lighting plan for the
Right.
property.
And
It
I-
really could be artfully done rather than just sort of,
Right. And especially on the outbuildings, because, I mean, if the light's not on, you probably won't even find the building, you know, because there's not gonna be street lighting as such. There might be pathway, there might be at certain angles, you know, so you know you're still on the road. But we don't see this place as a place with traffic. It'll be pedestrian. I mean, it has been over the last 40 years. As I say, you'll see golf carts, but you don't see people driving back and forth with their cars unless they're coming and going from the park.
you can slide that over a little so you don't hurt yourself trying to look around
The
the,
plan is to, kind of
and did you
Yeah,
introduce
if you,
yourself?
if you could use this, yeah, the microphone, please.
Rob Kraus with Northgate Resorts. So as far as the buildings will have all egress lighting at the pathways going out, and the buildings will be lit up around there in the general area so people can get their way to the buildings. That's typically what we do at our campgrounds. As far as like in the general area of the campsites, we don't put too much lighting in there.
That's the camper's job.
Yes, there's enough campfires and people's got lanterns hanging out and stuff like that. But yes, the buildings will all have the egress lighting, wall packs at all the exits, and any pathway lighting between the buildings that we need.
Okay, where are we? We're at, we passed lighting, and,
Number 8.
number 8, okay. Okay, Mass DEP is, they're in the process of,
Could you
Dealing-
pull the microphone
sure.
towards you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to keep
or
reminding
talk
you,
a
it's
lot
just that
louder,
we're.
right? Okay, Mass DEP is in the process. It's basically a 4-step process. They have to approve the leaching area, which is a pretty good size because it's taking 30,000 gallons a day. We upped that from a previous number by recalculating how this really is going to work. So it's a 30,000 gallon treatment plant, taking what is an average of 15,000 gallons a day in water supply. And that goes back to a metering situation on what was used last year, and then that was extrapolated into what's going to be used in the future. But the wastewater treatment plant, the leaching field has to go through a hydrogeological study, which has just been completed. They have to approve that before we can actually submit the plan for the wastewater treatment plant. They have to approve that hydrogeological study on the leaching area, and that's primarily to see where the water is going once it hits the leaching area. And again, this is treated water, and also what the mounding is underneath that leaching field to see if it is very effective. And the study pretty much shows it's very, very sandy, so there isn't much mounding. I think it's like 4 inches when the full force is on there. So that's the second step. The third step will be submitting this plan, and then the fourth step is actually, well, constructing is really the fourth step, but the fourth step is for the DEP to review the operation of it. And this plan, we have a lot of confidence in this. It's a wastewater treatment plant that I designed for a 68-unit 40B project up in Situate, Mass. That's already been built. I mean, the treatment plant's been built, and half the units have been built, and it's operating fine. They've already reviewed it. I mean, they approved that last year. So it's it's very sophisticated. It's 95% of it is underground. You only see what they call the risers. It doesn't have like a manhole at the surface. It has a riser maybe 2 or 3 feet, which will be shielded, you know, by landscaping. It shows on the plan. It's what we call a treatment train. There's 3 basic tanks, and they're fiberglass tanks. They're round. They're 10 feet in diameter. They're underground, There's two 20,000 gallons, and then there's a 25,000 gallon tank. The 25,000 gallon tank is the one that does the actual treating. And then there's a clarifier, which takes whatever solids are left, and then it goes to the leaching field. So that's gonna happen, and that's another tight situation for us. We're trying to get that built, you know, for opening. Now, what the DEP will allow us, and this is what they did up in Stockbridge, they allowed us to operate as a tight tank, which meant we could use the two primary settling tanks, the two 20,000, and not put on what they call the equalization tank pumps. So that those tanks would have to be pumped if we don't get everything in, especially electrical. If we don't get that in, we did that up there for a couple of weeks, and then the electricity come in. It's not only the electricity; they have to bring in the meters, and you know it's tough to get, especially with storms and everything. It's tough to get electric companies to perform as quickly as you'd like them to perform. But so, anyways, we already have that as an option. They suggested it for us up in Situate, and we would use that here. But we're hoping to get the whole thing operating, because the season's going to start. Only about half of the units will be usable in phase one, you know, so they'll be at half capacity. And this kind of treatment plant can be run like that because its basic treatment aspects of it are media within the tanks. They're little round plastic things that hold the bacteria that do the actual treatment. So you just put less media in for the first phase than you have for the second phase. So you can expand it, and you can reduce it. So that wastewater treatment plant is under their thing, and it's already in motion. It just takes a while for them to get through the steps. Okay, and then there's a landscaping plan that Rob can talk more about that. That's being done.
Yeah, we're putting up our plan is showing bushes and trees around there. We have the first phase complete, but we were kind of waiting until the second phase. And I know Mr. Glines asked to see that once we have it all completed, and that's no problem, we can do that. Yeah, but it shows all the different native bushes and trees that we plan to put on sites.
Yeah, and those.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, in the plants that you're putting in there, the planning board's regulations, zoning calls for those indigenous plants that you mentioned, are there various pollinator species you're looking at putting in as well? There's a lot of discussion about lack of pollinators and the impact that they're taking on them. So there's an option to look at things like that, and they're not overly expensive. It's a great add to the environment and to the area to put in those pollinator sort of species in your landscape.
Okay.
You know, some of these units will be set up to demarcate the individual campsites. So, yeah, so maybe that kind of plant life would work in there. Are they relatively low growth? You're talking about it's a low growth plant, right?
There's a lot of plants out there.
Okay, different size. Okay. Okay, and next, number 10, Mr. Glines said the applicant shall request a waiver for interior parking lot landscaping since a proposed row of parking exceeds 180 feet adjacent to the lodge. Now, we're talking about that as a waiver, and it basically has to do with dimensions here. But we agree with whatever Andrew is asking for, because it is kind of a unique situation, again, relative to how it compares to a subdivision or something like this. This is different. So whatever works, yeah, we'll ask for a waiver, and we'll try to produce whatever makes sense. Number 11, 10-foot wide screening buffer is required along the length of the buildings. This is, again, something that you would do in a subdivision or a commercial site, I believe. And we're looking at making that a 5-foot wide screening situation. And I believe that's approved, that situation is okay with the applicant's rate. So, okay, we're going to number 12. Okay, this comes up every time you don't have a pavement, and of course we don't want to pay any pavements because we don't want impervious areas contributing to stormwater. So the question is,
clarify how parking spaces will be delineated. Well, you're not gonna have striping, but, I mean, the other ways to do it is do it by post. You can number posts, you can actually either demarcate the center of a car, or you demarcate each width. I don't know what you've found successful in this kind of a situation.
Andy Glines with Fuss & O'Neill, town engineering consultant. I guess just, if I may, I can talk to a couple parking items that came up.
Please.
I guess with this specific one, it might be a good location. I know there were some railroad ties already on site. I can continue to use those, keep that aesthetic. Wheel stops would also be another option if you didn't have enough railroad ties. Usually they're a concern with snow removal, but that won't be an issue here where, you know, the campsite is closed for the winter. And I think that would go to kind of delineate some spacing between the spots, and then have an idea of how many spots are available. And also to one of the previous comments about delineating walkways, definitely don't expect the applicant to delineate walkways around the campsites or kind of the camp roads, but once you get close to the lodge building, the store, the laundry facility, and then the ice cream shop, I'd like to see railroad ties or wheel stops there where you're kind of delineating a parking area and then a separate walking area, or maintaining a clear width for pedestrian access around those buildings. And I think that could be done, you know, obviously without signage would get a little cumbersome and probably distract from the aesthetics that you're looking for.
Right.
So I think even I've seen it done with timbers as well. So I don't have a strong preference on the type of wheel stops that we use, but I think that would probably be the approach to go here.
And when we go to design the buildings, we'll have all that included in there.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I don't have any real concerns at this time that the applicant won't be able to meet the parking requirements for these building uses. But I ultimately would like to see, you know, kind of a parking layout plan. And if the board is okay with it, Fuss & O'Neill's okay with having that be included as a condition and something that I can look at with Paul, the building official, during the building permit process. So I guess strictly speaking about parking, I think that kind of covers a couple overarching comments between some of the bylaw sections.
No, I think it's very practical way to do it, even up by the water park. There's quite a few parking spaces we provided up there, but I do think you need a curb stop type situation, whether it's landscape timbers or concrete or whatever. But yeah, you'd prefer to do things that aren't going to add to needing impervious layers. You know, like you definitely don't want to pave any parking areas. You know, there is some pavement around the buildings out front, but we don't plan to expand that. Now, the next one's an easy one. Designate location for bicycle racks near the camp store and the lodge. I don't think that's an issue. Easy enough. And then number 14, delineate edge of gravel access drive and dimension aisle width. Request waiver is necessary. I think the width of the roadways is shown, so I don't think you mean that, right? Yeah, you're talking about something different than just the roadways, right?
This was strictly at the existing lodge, actually that same stretch where there was
Okay.
about 180 feet of parking spots delineated. I think that's a good location for proposed parking, and there is an existing access road at that location, but it's just not clear what the new edge, and I think that would probably be clarified at the landscaping plan as well,
Right.
where you'd know
Yep.
what the buffer is and what the
That's
driveway
right
would.
between the water park and the lodge right there.
Yeah, strictly, I'd like to confirm that you're able to meet the drive aisle width of 24 feet behind those spots. And if not, would need a waiver for the drive aisle width to be reviewed. So I guess defining and dimensioning that particular location. It's on sheet 5.
Yeah, it's actually good. We're showing the configuration that the architect gave us. We're not showing all the apparatus that goes in there, the slides and various things that you see at water parks. So it's this area here, and there's a pool over here. This is all phase one. The area that's been active in the last season, that we're hoping to open this season. For spring. So, we're talking about parking, we have a lot of parking designated across the street here. Now, I think it might be noted putting some stops or some plantings in between, so we don't have a stretch of.
Yeah, I think that would be a good location for wheel stops to prevent any of those passenger vehicles from, I guess, extending into the adjacent campsites, and also kind of delineating how far vehicles should pull in to make sure that the drive aisle is clear behind it, especially for emergency access around the lodge.
Right.
And also, that is the location where I wanted to clarify that the applicant will need a waiver for interior parking landscaping. There's a requirement for a landscape island for parking lots with over 10 spaces. For this, it's just one row of parking that's going to be, surrounded by landscaping around the lodge as well as the campgrounds. And since it's not going to be a paved stretch, it doesn't really make sense to have a landscaped or delineated landscape island kind of within that. It would really be gravel or stone, crushed stone parking.
And, let's see, oh, yeah. Okay, the next area had to do with loading spaces. Now, the way I'm looking at it, and I might be wrong, Rob can address this, but I'm looking at the only loading area will be the maintenance garage area, the garage doors. I don't think you're gonna have a loading dock anywhere that I know.
No, there's no loading docks that we have planned.
Yeah.
No.
So I'm just thinking the only place you'd have to have it is the maintenance building. Even deliveries to the store would probably just be, I believe they store everything in the maintenance building. So-
Everything gets dropped at the front and gets dispersed
Right.
within.
So that's the answer to that issue there.
If you could just, even if it's not going to be defined in the field, I guess dimension that and kind of the, confirm the orientation of how the vehicle would park. Basically, I'm sure the deputy fire chief, Jesse Boyle, is going to want to see that as well and make sure that
Okay.
he'd still have adequate access around the buildings if there was also a vehicle parked loading at the same time.
Now, the issue of signage, I think pretty much it's going to be similar signs that they already have, but once they set up the buildings, obviously there's going to be signs directing people to different buildings and different paths. I don't know if any major signs for the area itself are going to be there, maybe out in front, maybe.
Right now, there's no plan for any additional signs out front.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would just be a sign, just a post basically to mark out a camp spot and a little post for like a street name or something like that, that we have inside the park.
And maybe have something at the water park, just directing people.
Any signage adjustments out on Tremont Street?
No, not right now. We're not planning anything.
Yeah. And let's see. We're on number 17, section 3620 of the bylaws. Refer to plan set comments regarding modifications to proposed soil erosion and sediment control. I agree that a condition should be included in the decision letter. to provide we would be providing an SWPPP anyways, but we usually do that just before we get occupancy, which will be basically, for people who don't know what that is, it's a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And what it is to make sure that you're constantly aware of where your stormwater is going and causing erosion on somebody else's property especially, and even on your own property, that you're repairing it and not causing a problem in the roadways. Andy and I have looked at how these roads should be designed now that they're relatively flat roads. We shouldn't have the erosion, and we have really good sands as far as what you'd call a percolation rate. And we're going to be putting crushed stone on top. So we believe that the roads themselves will be absorbing a lot of the stormwater. And we have a contingency plan if there is a problem, that we would add some kind of a stone trench with a pipe, perforated pipe, like what you'd think of as a French drain, if in some area that assumption doesn't work and we have any problems with drainage. I'll refer to Andy on that.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see the stormwater pollution prevention plan, I guess, probably before issuing a building permit for the structures.
Right.
Just because that, before you really continue any site disturbance. And I believe you'd need to submit to EPA for NIPD's coverage for this as well, right? For the 14-day.
It's basically a filing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, and and as far as the road drainage, I think what you're primarily referring to is what happens with roof drainage, because that's where we do have permeability on different roofs from buildings. So will they need some kind of a designated, I wouldn't say basin, but some kind of a device to take that drainage and not have it just, flow out over the whole site. So we're definitely looking at that. So as a condition, I think that would make a lot of sense. And we obviously agree with the SWPPP. We do that for every site. And number 18, section 4210, Fuss and O'Neill does not have any concerns with the current stormwater management approach. However, there is a possibility that additional dry wells may be required to manage stormwater, but these locations may not be able to be identified until after site improvements have been installed. And I totally agree with that. A condition is recommended to require Fuss and O'Neill to conduct a site inspection prior to issuing certificates of occupancy to confirm stormwater and sediment are being managed on site. And it goes on with a subsection. If locations experience localized ponding, Fuss and O'Neill recommends a catch basin with a sump connected to a separate dry well structure. Upgradient lawn and catch basin will provide adequate pretreatment and sediment collection prior to discharge infiltration by dry well structure. In other words, the actual landscaping, lawns, whatever, tend to take away the sediment, so you shouldn't be getting a lot of sediment in your catch basins, but you have sumps there to handle that. But the only place we have an issue with that, I think, is at the end. There was some recommendation for catch basins and dry wells down by the store and all that. I think that has to be looked at because of the depth of groundwater. Groundwater most of that is only 2 or 3 feet down, so you can't really put a catch basin expecting it to have a leaching capability, because it won't. But we agree for it to be a condition that I think we have to resolve, while we're looking at.
Essentially here, their stormwater management design meets the local and state requirements. We didn't identify any issues with their subwatershed delineation or modeling. And I don't think there's any risk to abutters or the public right-of-way for any stormwater discharge from this site. But I do see the possibility of some localized ponding issues where you just may have some areas adjacent to some of the camp roads or some of the camp sites that may be on the lower end of the site that may benefit from having some additional basically catch basins and dry well locations there, which ultimately that wouldn't change any of the runoff from the site to any of the butters, but it's something that could be a more longer-term maintenance issue. So what I was recommending is, I guess, after substantial completion of construction, Fuss and O'Neill could do a site inspection, make sure that there wasn't any erosion or sediment issues or localized ponding issues on site, and do a site walk with the applicant and the applicant's engineer to, identify any potential locations where these basically dry wells should be located.
While we're on the subject, we noticed that where the dumpsters are located tends to funnel right out into the roadway there. Have you come up with a design to contain, any rainwater or various other issues in regards to the drainage in that area?
We could put, because that little area's all asphalt right there, we could concrete some berms right around there or something and kind of funnel it back behind it or something like that so it doesn't run off down to the bog area.
Okay, because it looked like it run right out into the middle of the street into the catch basin for the bog, so.
It does have a little slope that way.
Yeah.
Now, this next one, number 19, section 5330, I'm not exactly sure what that was. Maybe you can explain, Andrew. The planning board shall include findings for this section within the decision letter. What's 5330 asking for?
If I remember correctly, it's impacts noise pollution.
Oh, okay.
So it's Fuss and O'Neill doesn't have any concerns with that section, but it is something that should be, I believe, included in the decision letter, that the planning board doesn't have any concerns with those items. So,
And the next one is recommendation that a condition that it be limited to 325, which is fine with us. We asked for 324, but we'll take 325. There's a number of units. The next one, the next section has to do with the Stormwater Management Report, which we've talked about somewhat. And what Andrew's doing here is he's breaking it down to the various watersheds that are designated on the stormwater plan. There's certain areas that water kind of is contained within those areas. And he's saying add impervious area from check-in booth. Now, the check-in booth is going to be down the road from the actual gates that are the entrance and pavilion. And so basically, it is paved right now, and we do have to deal with it, but you're just saying expand it in that area, yeah.
yeah.
So that'll be the one impervious area that we're gonna deal with. It's out front, it's in the low area. It makes it tougher to put any kind of detention basin or even a rain garden, it's just, but we've been thinking about that actually from the very beginning, because it is the entrance. And we want to avoid flooding in that area. So we agree that something should be done there. We've done a certain amount in relationship to that Cranberry Bog next. There was a culvert there, and there was a little bit of interruption of flow, and what we did is worked on that, and I believe that the Cranberry Bog owner was okay with that. I haven't heard any negative about that. But we will try to bring some of that, maybe as much as we can, in the other direction towards the parking area and have it dissipated there.
Yeah, I think, potentially for some of the buildings that are more upgrading and have more separation of groundwater, some of the dry wells at the
Right.
downspout locations would be useful. And then the other ones, understanding some of these buildings are the smaller buildings, the check-in building and is located closer to the bog, less vertical separation of groundwater, but just being mindful of where that roof runoff's gonna discharge
Right.
and mitigate any icing conditions where you'd be discharging a downspout towards pavement.
Of course, we're not open during
Sure.
that season.
Right.
You know, we close by October 15th, so hopefully there's no icing by then. Okay, number 2 in that group is noted that there is an increase in peak flow of sub-watershed 4 between existing and proposed conditions. However, this area discharges to Ben's Pond, which, as long as it's clean, we're okay with that. And Fussin and Mayo agrees that this increase in peak flow rate does not need to be mitigated and will not have an impact on abutters or downstream conditions. Well, it's all on our property, so it shouldn't, yeah. So we agree with that, obviously. Now, post-construction watershed plan, turn on proposed contours on, you're telling us to just turn it on the plan. As people know how a plan is developed, it's a number of layers, and sometimes not all the layers get put on the same plan, so you're just saying you want to see the contours on the sub-watershed plan map,
Yeah, just for clarity.
right? And we got to fix a typo, so. You talk about traffic management, and basically, I won't try to read it all, but basically, that's kind of been done, and I believe they've, Northgate has submitted something to you on something that was done historically, so I won't go through that.
Just for the benefit of the board, there was a previous traffic assessment that was done, traffic count for the previous campground, and really what that identified is that the majority of the vehicles entering and exiting the property are passenger or small vehicles. There is less than a dozen or so, I would say, medium-sized vehicles, and it didn't really seem like there was much of all traffic for large or trailer type vehicles. And I think the applicant and the owner could probably speak better to the nature of this campground and kind of the permanent campers as well as the proposed cabins. But my understanding is a lot of the campers, although they could be moved, they stay there year-round even though they're not occupied. So although the applicant is increasing the number of campsites for the project, that would have an impact on passenger vehicles on Tremont Street and not larger vehicles. And then the peak time frames for those vehicles would be Friday nights, Saturday midday around lunch, and then a little bit on Sunday, but really negligible amounts of an increase on Monday through Thursday, where you'd be seeing other peak trips from other residential neighborhoods or businesses where you'd get commuter traffic. So I basically I don't have any concerns with the traffic impacts of the proposed expansion of the campground.
Okay, next is kind of a procedure situation. In addition to signing the decision letter, the building official will require each sheet to be signed by the planning board. A signature block should be added to allow planning board approval, and that will be added to the plans. Existing conditions, we're talking about keeping the site under control relative to erosion and using filter socks for basically the erosion control along the edges, along the perimeter, and providing perimeter erosion, around the water park too. And we agree to all those conditions. That would normally be what you're doing when you're constructing those kind of areas, and you don't want your erosion flowing off into other people's areas, even though you own the whole site, but you don't want campers to be inconvenienced and just have a mess around them of erosion, so you have to control each area. Existing conditions, the erosion control plan addresses that too. And again, that's definitely a condition that has to be imposed. And proposed conditions as far as the grading plan, We show some, or we have written up in the stormwater report, talks about grass swales. The grass swales are part of the erosion control system, and they're also part of reducing the sedimentation from coming off site. In other words, the grass kind of holds that material in. So Andrew has just identified a couple of areas that have to be done to make sure that that's done properly. Okay, the sheet 6 of 13, which is the next sheet up there, but you want to show the check-in booth, clarify location and width of travel lanes adjacent to check-in booth. Are you looking for markings on the pavement, or when you say?
Basically, want to ensure that you're not restricting flow on Shoestring Road, which is as a public right-of-way for your check-in booth. So I have I know you said you wouldn't have a gate there, but just make sure that the proximity of the check-in booth would have a pull-off lane, and you'd still have,
Right.
access for emergency vehicles as
Right.
well as the public right-of-way. So it doesn't need to be demarcated, but I would like on the plans to see it dimensioned.
Right. Well, right now, we have the area to do it, so it could be either marked or it could, yeah, we can do that. The fact that the public road ends kind of at the gate, so it's primarily, I think, public vehicles, town vehicles that would pass through there, other than the people using the park. I don't think the general public will be driving through there, but I can see what you're talking about. And again, we're talking about the parking, the layout of the parking for the store in the main building. Yeah, I think that's got to be more formalized, and I don't think there's any problem with that. And show existing culvert north of the existing main building. East side of it, and clarify the intent of. Okay, the existing culvert north of the existing main building.
So this is the proposed campground expansion area to the north end of the site.
Oh,
There's basically the main access road from the existing main building and camp store north to that proposed campground expansion area. The way the existing as well as the proposed topography slopes down to the south, and there's an existing culvert there. And I
okay. Yeah, I get.
recommend having another catch basin and dry well to pick up some of that flow up gradient of that access road, so that you're mitigating any risk of sedimentation or erosion of that access road.
Okay. Yeah, we should go over that with you to show us exactly what you're talking about. Okay, you talk about grass swales again, and we can do that easily enough. Okay, this is where I had some comment about the groundwater. When we're talking about the existing main building and providing catch basins with a sump and dry wells, that can only be done kind of above the building, where it gets a little bit higher, almost behind the store. I'm not sure we can do that out front and not be in groundwater. We're pretty close to the groundwater there, and especially, we also realize that the bogs get filled, so it's not necessarily groundwater all the time. I mean, when they fill them for the winter time, and that raises the groundwater in that immediate area, so we don't want to put a catch basin right there. We might have to route it a little bit up gradient, so, which means we have to fill some areas in there, but we can do it.
So question,
Yes, go ahead.
that channelized water flow, is that from the driveways or the buildings are we talking about, or a combination of both?
So the previous comment about, really it would be the proposed campground expansion area would be campsites and then the adjacent campground roads. Obviously that area is going to be almost entirely pervious, where the campgrounds would be grass, and then even as I understand, the proposed cabins in that area are going to be elevated and have crushed stone underneath.
Right, yeah.
But just having a large area, even if it is pervious, you begin to, especially during larger storm events, concentrate flow on the low end. And I'd just like to pick that up and infiltrate it prior to getting to the access road, which similar drainage patterns that are currently there. Right now, there's a culvert to convey that flow, and since this is a more upgrading area, I think you have adequate separation of groundwater at that location.
Right.
I'd just like to see a catch basin and a dry well there.
Is it feasible, I know these cabins are small, but is it feasible to have like the downspouts on the cabins and just take them to a small dry well at the cabins just to capture some of that flow?
I mean, I think even without a designated dry well, just the perimeter landscaping around, as well as the stone underneath, would kind of act as a dry well for those. And that's definitely a acceptable stormwater management approach for each individual cabin.
Right.
Obviously, the soils are pretty sandy, that's why people keep digging them up and taking them other places, because
Yeah.
it shouldn't be an issue with a lot of that.
Yeah, it's better than a 2-minute perk across the site, really.
So I think what you're talking about, Ryan, is that all this water is gonna be running off down this way.
Correct.
You want something right here to
Yeah.
catch it before it all everything just kind of funnels down this area by the bottom.
Yeah, basically just to the north of that intersection.
North of this intersection?
Yeah, just in there.
Yep.
And, pick that up before it starts running across the access roads. And just to reiterate, the access roads are actually going to be crushed stone as well, so not a compacted gravel, compacted gravel road. It would actually be a crushed stone, so you'd actually get, infiltration in those roads as well. That was something that I discussed with the applicant and their engineer during my initial site walk about a month ago. So.
And the last has to do with kind of implementing what we were just talking about, the various drainage aspects. So, and that's kind of it. So, I mean, obviously, we would like to be able to go forward without interruptions, since there's only about 6 weeks left to construct. But it's up to the planning board whether we do that or not.
Do you think you could modify the site plans to include all of the issues that were brought up by Mr. Glines before our next meeting?
Yes, in fact, yeah, we can do that. But what we don't want to do is interrupt the project the way it's going. If there's any way we can modify, if we could, and I'm just throwing this out, I'm not trying to be argumentative, if we could somehow approve the decision and approve the plan at the next meeting, so at least we have some momentum of continuing to next 2 weeks to get this stuff in. The wastewater treatment plant itself, when it comes to constructing that, we're planning on doing that the last 3 or 4 weeks, but it is going to take some time. It's not an overnight installation, so we're kind of hoping that we get all the roads done and the water and sewer in the pipes in the ground before that happens. So that's why we're being so sensitive about the time situation. But if we can not stop building, and yes, we can get all these things done before the next meeting. And there's a couple of things I'd want to sit down with Andy to go over to make sure we understand exactly what we're talking about, especially on the drainage end. But I don't see any reason why we can't finish that. From the corporate end, I'd like Rob to express what he...
No, I mean, if getting the plans done for the meeting in 2 weeks as a condition, and that we can sign off that everybody agrees, and we can have all these plans back in front of you to sign in 2 weeks.
Correct.
I would also like to see a more detailed site plan specific to the water park bringing in heights, fences, and whatever safety and
When we go, our next step after the approval here is bringing in the design architects and structural engineers and everything, and we'll have plans for each area. I mean, it'll be complete sets of plans for each building. The water park, we have a water park contractor designer. They'll produce us full sets of drawings just for the water parks.
And-
All we're gonna do is put the footprint on. We're not gonna put all the apparatus. That's gonna be the plan by the architect. Or a
And
set
we
of-
will,
or a set
we'll
of
come
plans.
back and present all those too.
as a modification,
Yes.
then we'd want to set that as a condition.
Yeah, all the future buildings would be presented again.
Now, have you received Concom permission in regards to the construction work and buildings and?
Yeah. In fact, I understand that Brooke Monroe left the order of conditions downstairs, but the door's locked. I'm gonna pick it up tomorrow morning. But yeah, they approved it at their last meeting, which was two weeks ago. And that's kind of where all the sensitive areas came in as far as where we placed things and how we did the grading. Not that it isn't just as important before the planning board, but they had a whole different array of things that they worry about. And we met their requirements and they've given us their approval and the order of conditions. And we'll submit that to you as soon as I pick it up.
Okay, and fire safety signed off by
Well,
the,
Yeah, well, what I wanted to have the plan first, and we finished the plan, and I'll meet with, is it Jeff?
Jesse Boyle.
Jesse Boyle. Yeah, I'll meet,
okay,
I'll
no,
call
that's
him tomorrow.
understandable.
Yeah, I'll call him, and we'll sit down, I'll go over the plan with him. What we did is, we did a standard as far as hydrants, as I said, 500 feet apart. We try to put them in the right locations, like we have one, obviously, near the buildings down front there, you know, so, I mean, you have to, whether it's 500 feet or not, you want to have a hydrant there for purposes of obvious reasons, so.
And I did share the original plan set from the applicant with Jesse Boyle and discussed it briefly with him. He issued a couple preliminary comments via email to me that I incorporated into my review memo, but I advised the planning board to get a formal letter from the fire department and you know, ensure that they are all set with any other comments. But I don't think there's anything notable here that would change what the applicant's proposing, but in the past, we've always waited for him to issue a formal letter.
Yeah. And of course, prior to Northgate taking over, we didn't have any of those fire protection situations there. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to pay attention to that wasn't there before. Hydrants and even the water gates are important, you know, for that, to be able to shut off certain areas. So I think we've covered all the issues.
Well, just-
Andrew did a really detailed job. It forced me to
Well, he's,
just spend a few hours going through it, but I think it's good. He cited what was definitely important that we have to get on the plan, and we will get it. I mean, it's not a matter of us not wanting to put things on the plan. We just want to make sure when we prepare that final plan, it is the final plan.
yes,
It's not
yeah.
something that's a moving target that we're, you know, someone comes in, and this isn't referring to Tom, of course, sometimes someone else comes in and wants something else, you know, we want to get everything on the plan that we can. And we
Yeah.
don't expect you to sign a plan that isn't complete, you know, that's obvious, so.
And the final condition that I don't see it on our draft here is that the water park was to be private for the park only?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think so.
Yes. Okay.
And it's also not going to even be constructed till next year, that's not. part of
Right,
phase
right.
one. Yeah,
Right, but then it raises a whole host of other issues were it to be a public park or public access, so
okay, yeah.
that was all I had.
All right, and any other comments? Any comments by Andy or Tom?
No, I think that if we can get these things on the plan and get a lot of these loose ends buttoned up, it should seem like a perfectly reasonable thing to be back here in 2 weeks with a plan set that Andy's had a chance to review to make sure those things he's directed are on the plan. He's had a chance to look at them. We can put together a draft decision for a vote at your next meeting.
Okay.
Does that seem reasonable to you, Andy, from the things that we're...
Yeah, I guess in the past, I think some of the boards have approved a plan set with conditions that would be reviewed again by Fuss and O'Neill, but I defer to the town planner and the planning board here on whether or not they feel comfortable with the number of outstanding items for this project. And I don't know, I guess
Well, they are going to be updating the site plan to include all of this, is what I understand, right?
Correct.
And in enough time to give us a chance to review it, so it's important that you have the time to review it, though.
Well,
yeah, so I'd like to review a full set and then the updated decision letter from the that the town's legal counsel has had a chance to review as well. So I think that would be, the cleanest way to approve this.
Okay. All right, so the sooner you can update the plan, the sooner Andy can look at it, and then the sooner Tom and Andy can look at this, and then if it has to be sent to KP for whatever reasons that we need it to be reviewed for. So,
Well, considering we've got 2 weeks, if we get this done in half that time, which I'm gonna try to do, do you think all that other kind of review, especially the town's attorney, can be done by the next hearing? As far as
No,
the
it's-
decision and the, because what we're afraid of is that it gets pushed off to another 2 weeks, and then we're really tight on trying to finish this thing up.
Yeah, I frankly don't see a whole lot for town council's review. I'll obviously have the format that council wants to use.
okay.
And I don't really see this as a major review by council, just to make sure things are fine to form. I think it's just making sure that the things that Andy pointed out are on the plan, and then we can capture those things in the document, in the decision, including those conditions the board's discussed. So,
Okay.
When would you need this information back to you by for time to review it?
I'd like to have a week prior to the next hearing, and then I guess Fuss and O'Neill will review the decision letter for waivers and conditions and make sure that those are representative for what we had in our memo as well as what was discussed in the hearings. But not being a lawyer, I'm not going to sign off on the decision letter. And as this original draft was written by the applicant's legal counsel, I'd just like to give KP Law the opportunity to look at it. But I agree with Tom. I don't think there's anything drastic there, that would need to be changed. The draft that I have so far, already has the main body of that information.
and that's why we asked for it in a Word document, so we can cut and paste your stuff into our format and massage it up.
Right.
And Dick, as a gift for you, I have the order of conditions from the Conservation Commission.
Oh, you do have-
You can have my
okay.
copy. I'll get one from Tremar.
Well, I think they left it with Michelle anyway, so.
Okay.
All right, this is a public hearing, and if there's anybody out in the audience that would like to have anything to say tonight before we continue this hearing. All right, seeing no one coming forward, I'd like a motion to continue this public hearing to February 22nd at 7 o'clock.
That said motion.
Cornelia Shea will second.
All right, so we have motion and second for the discussion. Seeing none, let's take a vote.
Cornelia Shea says aye.
Bruce Mackey, aye.
Kevin Robinson, aye.
Ellen Sordillo, aye.
All right, okay. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh. All right, so next, we have, okay, we have a public hearing. I have to read. Oh, no, okay, so, yeah, before we do that, so we have, the application of Colin Harris requesting a special permit for this 38 Purchase Street in Carver to redesignate the home from a single-family with in-law apartment to a two-family home. So, yeah, I think at the last meeting, I think the planning board was pretty much set with everything that we looked at, and and Amy Questle said she would write up a decision. I don't know if that ever happened.
I've not seen one.
Okay. So we're probably going to have to continue this until our next hearing.
Quick question, have we received an updated application?
Yeah, if you could please step up and just give us your name and address and speak into the microphone, please. Yeah, there were some other questions that we had.
I'm Colin Harris, 38 Purchase Street.
And Michelle Manley, 38 Purchase Street. What we have is the affidavit saying that the executors of the estate are backing his application.
Okay, so we'll need a copy of that?
Okay.
We'll probably need a copy of that. Is that a copy, or is that?
Yeah, it's a copy.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have to check with Amy to make sure that that will pass muster for,
Yeah, either, well, if Amy can't get to it, we do have Tom here that could write the decision. And so if you could give that information to Tom.
Sure.
And if it's copies, then that's good. And we'll see what we can come up with at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll continue. So on the application of Colin Harris on 38 Purchase Street, I'd like to continue the public hearing to February 22nd at 7 o'clock.
I'll make that said motion.
Cornelia Shea will second that motion.
All right, so let's take a roll call vote.
Cornelia Shea says aye.
Bruce Mackey, aye.
Kevin Robinson, aye.
Ellen Sordillo, aye.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry that I should have taken you before our big hearing, but we'll try to get this together for you for our next meeting.
We get the affidavit there, but does it need to be, does the application for the permit actually have to be in the show's name?
It does, as the homeowner or executive of the estate.
I thought it was just the affidavit we needed.
Yeah,
That's what we were, that's kind of what we heard from last time.
You might want to get in touch with Tom, and
Just give me a call at the office tomorrow.
Right, only the
Bob.
only the homeowner can,
Come in the building.
only the homeowner
he's
can file for an
yeah, Tom is
application.
our interim town planner. So if you call the planning office and ask for Tom, and you can discuss this with him, and if he writes the decision, he'll have the answers for you, and if Amy's going to do it, at least Tom will know what you're asking about. All right?
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so now we go on to a new public hearing. So in accordance with the provisions of the Town of Carver zoning bylaw, the Carver Planning Board will hold a public hearing on January 20, this is,
February 8th.
yeah, so this is February 8th. Well, February 8th, this one says January 25th, but at 7 PM in the Carver Town Hall, Meeting Room 1, on the application of Colin Harris requesting a special permit pursuant to sections 2230 and 5300 of the Carver zoning bylaw located at 38 Purchase Street in Carver, Mass.
Mr. Mackey,
Assessors-
that's the one we just did.
You want to go down to 5, Bruce?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's the old one, yep. That is the wrong, no wonder it had the wrong date on it. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, Timeless Stoneworks, okay, I have the right one, yeah. This is a public hearing notice in accordance with the provisions of the Town of Carver zoning bylaw. The Carver Planning Board will hold a public hearing on February 8th, 2022 at 7 PM in the Carver Town Hall, Meeting Room 1, on the application of George R. Ajami, Timeless Stoneworks LLC, requesting a special permit and site plan review pursuant to sections 3100, 5300, 2230 of the Carver zoning bylaw, located at 316 Tremont Street in Carver, Mass. Assessors map 127, lot 8, to construct a 7,320-foot square foot warehouse with storefront and associated utilities, parking, and landscaping in industrial A district. Any persons interested in wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated. A copy of the plan is on file at the Planning Department and may be reviewed during normal business hours. Carver Planning Board, Bruce Mackey, Chair. Carver Reporter, published dates January 21st and January 28th of 2022. And I just want to, this is something that, I'm just going to ask this of Andy. This is something that, have you looked at this at all?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, okay. And Tom's
Well,
only
with the exception of
been-
tonight before I came, so may have some questions. but-
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted, and so we really haven't had a department review on this. Have you had time to look at this at all, or?
I think Andy and I opened the plan about the same time.
Yeah,
So
okay.
apologies.
All right. So tonight we'll do, we can do a presentation, and then we'll probably schedule a site visit. And then at some point in time, the department heads will take a look at this, like fire and Board of Health and the building department. I've already talked to the building department about this, as far as setbacks and things like that, but, and then, and then by that time, Andy will have a chance to take a look at this too, and also Tom. So we'll continue this to another meeting, but tonight we'll just have the presentation.
Okay, that's fine. Chairman Mackey, Stuart Clark with Green Seal Environmental, representing George Ajami and Timeless Stoneworks. Basically, we have, Mr. Ajami came into town in 2008. He's been a good citizen here. He's been running his stone manufacturing business out of 316 Tremont Street. That's like a 2.8 acre parcel of land. The existing conditions are as shown here. There's a parking area here, a small showroom here that he does sales out of. In the back, he has his manufacturing building here. All this area here is gravel, and you can see the stone slabs are stored outside on racks. In the back, there is a stormwater feature. All the stormwater runs from the front of the lot towards the back, mostly by sheet flow. There is a cranberry bog that bumps in here, and there's a wetland resource area associated with that, and a 100-foot and a 65-foot buffer. This is in front of the Conservation Commission as we speak. The meetings may continue to the 16th. What Mr. Ajami wants to do, sorry, I only have one hand. He wants to construct an identical building, 7,320 square feet, directly across from his existing building. In the front of this building, as I guess would be like a phase 2, but he wants to put a showroom here at some point to display his finished works. They manufacture in here, they have large cranes, they have a digital computer system which picks up the slabs, they grind them, they edge them. It's quite an operation in there. But he doesn't have any storage in there, as you can tell. It's all over the site. So when he gets a finished product, you know, a sink, a cabinet, a countertop, he has to store it outside or get it off site rapidly. So he wants to have some dry storage in this building. Probably 2/3 of the building will be dry storage. All the manufacturing will continue to happen in this building because to move that equipment would cost him thousands and thousands of dollars. Stormwater from this building will be directed back, piped, will be collected in collectors from the downspouts and directed back to this infiltration basin back here. It's quite good size, and the sands, it's all sands out there and good soils. The septic system is located in this area. He's proposing a couple bathrooms here, but that's part of the shop area or the showroom area. So he's just gonna stub it out now, and he's gonna install the septic tank. But he's gonna have it capped, and he's just gonna have it there for the future. The reason he wants to put it in now is because we're gonna pave up to here, just so that we can have ADA compliance, because the parking for the showroom will be right here. You have to give the shortest path for ADA accessibility. Other than that, you know, the bylaws allow you to allow this board, or being the special permit granting authority, to issue a permit if you can meet these four criteria: social, economic, and community needs. We would submit to you that the time of storm work provides Carver and the surrounding communities with countertop needed for new construction and remodeling project. Having this business in town allows local contractors a source for these materials for their projects. It's a nice little business he's got there. He doesn't just do Carver, he goes all the way down the Cape. I've seen his trucks. Section 5332 says traffic flows and safety. Again, the new building is not going to increase the number of people there. He'll probably get maybe a customer an hour on weekends, maybe 2 customers an hour when he has his showroom open. The rest of it's just dry storage. They're going to be moving, slabs in and out via forklift. So there's not going to be much burden on, on traffic or safety or traffic flow. Everybody in the parking lot can turn around adequately and head out. Nobody's going to be backing out onto Route 58. The 5333 says adequacy of utilities and other public services. This lot is serviced by private septic and private well, so there's no burden on town systems there. Again, it's a commercial project, so there's no burden on schools, and the fire and police aspect of it are relatively the same. The last 4th criteria is potential fiscal impact. As I say, this place has been here from 2008, and it's assessed at $744,000, and it generates about $20,000 a year for the town. With the new building, it'll probably go up another $500,000, which would be another $10,000 a year for the town. So that's about $30,000 a year for the town. This is a zoned industrial. It's where the town wants the development. It's an industrial project with a little retail component, which is triggering the site plan review and the special permit, and that's why we're here tonight. I would be happy to answer any questions you or the public may have.
I was just looking at the plans this afternoon, and I see that part of the proposed building is in the 65-foot buffer to the BVW, and, you know, ordinarily, I let conservation take care of that kind of stuff, but actually, the building is sitting within that area. Is that something that you feel that the conservation's going to approve?
That is we've been getting pushback on that, yes. The reason that we had to push in, it's only 2 feet in the 65, and it's already disturbed area. As you can see, you know, from the existing conditions, there's you know, this is all gravel, and it's not the kind of buffer zone you would think or would protect a wetland resource area. You're thinking of topsoil and organic mat and filtering. So this is just gravel, and the reason I had to push the building over into that is that I wanted to maintain 20 feet of separation between the two buildings, so that we can get access up and down through there. And I'm right at the minimum setback right there. The side setback's 30, and that's 30.6. So I squeeze it in the best I can. The conservation wanted me to put it out back here. But to do that, you really lose all your street presence, and there's no sense having a showroom if you can't even see the building. So that's the argument we're having with them, or I guess discussion we're having with them. I don't believe that resource area is, you know, protecting the bog at all. We're taking all the water and collecting it off the roof and infiltrating it back here. And that's the only function that this 65-foot area in this here, within the 65-foot is doing now, is infiltrating water. Again, there's no topsoil, there's no organic mat, there's no vegetation, there's nothing there to clean the stormwater. Excuse me.
So what if the conservation doesn't go along with this? I mean, what I'm thinking of is, you know, generally we go out for a site walk, and I just like to see, I don't remember what the existing building looks like, I don't remember what the office looks like. Generally, I like to have an elevation of the building.
I think, wasn't there one included, sir?
I didn't.
Yeah, A1, yeah.
I didn't see one, but
They only gave
maybe
you a floor plan, that's.
Yeah.
I thought it was 29 feet.
Yeah, it's going to be very similar to the existing building. It's just you know, like a space metal building.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I'd like to go out there and see what the
Please,
existing
yeah.
building looks like, and then what this new building looks like, because we've been getting comments on past projects about what those look like, and we just want to make sure that.
Sure. You know, would you like me to attend that site walk with you guys?
Yes, well, generally what we do is if, I'm just wondering if this project would go ahead, if the conservation says you can't put the building within that 65-foot, would you, BVW, would you make the building 2 feet less wide, or?
I haven't broached that subject with them. I had my first meeting, they asked me to talk with Mr. Jami about moving the building, and he brought up the storefront and the street front presence that he wanted. The Conservation Commission also said, well, you could put your showroom in the other building and put the other building out there. And he's like, you know, I have $200,000 equipment in there. It put me out of business for a month to move all that stuff. And, you know, so he's not willing to do that. So I'm going to go back to the board and, you know, fall on my knees and do my begging and pleading and hope for the best. If that doesn't happen, then yes, we're going to have to do something differently.
And you got 20 foot between the buildings. I guess you'd have to talk to the fire department, but I
Right.
imagine there's a minimum distance between the buildings. Is it 20 feet?
I don't know if there is no code, fire code for between buildings. I've seen them close as 12 feet. You go in Boston, you see them 2 feet. You know, I wanted the 20 feet just for my own engineering it just makes good engineering sense. You want to be able to get up and down that middle row with excuse me, with an 8-foot wide fire truck if you had to, you know? Not that they're ever gonna fight a fire from the middle, you know, they're always gonna go around the outside. But there's no hydrants or water out here anyway, so they're gonna have to bring their own water.
Yeah, so generally, on something like this, I'd like to see the building corners staked out, and I guess, and then we could just take a look at the type of buildings that already exist out there, and...
Chairman Mackey, is that prior to the site visit stakeout?
No, yes, prior to the, so when we schedule our site visit to go out there, generally we go over with the engineer or the owner of the property, and just to show us the location of the building and to see what's out there.
Would be happy to.
How far is this building set back from the roadway?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, front setback, 253 feet.
And you would be concerned at this point about your street presence with it set
Well,
that far back?
The thing is, if they wanted us to tuck it back, sorry, my pointer's not working, tuck it back behind this building.
Well, I see their point, because it's a very big lot, and that's well out of the wetland zone, because you're gonna have to deal with runoff, and you got a delivery issues within the 100-foot, and a lot of trenching to be done. Has there been prior approval through Concom for the work done that's already done within the 65 and 100-foot?
I went to the registry of deeds today and I looked for anything and I couldn't find anything. The lot was developed, I went back on Google Earth, and first development I saw was 2003. Mr. Jami acquired this in 2008. So I don't know if they didn't record it, or I don't know how it was developed.
And we don't have a height on it yet,
On the building?
on the new building?
Oh, it was gonna be underneath the 3511. It's probably be 26, 28.
Yeah, I thought it mentioned 29, and when I
It
was
might be
looking
29,
through
sir.
it. But, yeah, all right.
I mean, all we can go is with what he has drawn. I mean, I can understand what you're saying, you don't want to put a showroom in back of a building that's already there, and you'd rather have the showroom and probably a sign, you know, showing that that's where the products are gonna be displayed, and you want to see the building from the street. You know, what conservation does with this, that's their decision, but, I don't know, we could look at it, I don't know, does Tom, or?
Yeah, a couple questions. And nice to see you again, Stuart. You're taller off of Zoom. So we talked about earlier, what's the actual size of the building? Because one site plan said 7320 and the special permit said 7230.
It's 7320.
7320.
It's 122 by 60.
And because it's an engineered building, making it 2 feet smaller isn't a very good option?
Excuse me. Yeah, the contractor who, Roger, what's it? I forget what his company is, from Cape Wide. He's the one who put up the first building, from what I understand, and he wanted to put up just exactly the same building. So I don't know if they come in 2-foot increments, 4-foot increments. That's a little bit out of my knowledge base.
Because if his use is simply for storage, he'd lose a couple feet of storage, but
Right.
it's not like he has to fit his working equipment into the structure.
That's correct.
So I was on the site today, I took a drive out, and the thing about the orientation is that new building with the showroom would be directly in front of the driveway. So that's, I'm sure, what he's looking at, trying to
Right.
get that. You know, you turn in and you see the showroom right there. So you mentioned something about the restrooms running the pipe, but not creating the restrooms for those?
Yeah, he was just gonna stub them in at this point until he built the showroom.
Okay.
Because he didn't know if he was gonna do the showroom right off or it'd be next year. So he
But
just
certainly
wanted.
you'd have restrooms for the showroom, I would think.
Right, oh, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
but not for the workers, they gotta go next door.
And now, there's a 10-foot screening requirement for the building. Do you see that fitting in here?
I have landscaping out front in this area. Down this area, I didn't put any screening. We have natural screening on the side property line, which is over 10 feet. But there's no residential around here. This is all commercial and cranberry bogs.
Right, now you're asking for a rather large reduction in the parking spaces also, I understand?
Yeah, if you will, can I approach? I'm just gonna show you a couple pictures inside the building. It's really full in there, and they don't have a lot of employees because the equipment's so big. So I think they have about 10 to 12 employees there. So we were looking for a reduction in parking. There is other opportunities to park on the site because it's so large and gravel. And I was thinking, as we sat here tonight, this area here could almost be some parking over here. If I could get a 24-foot drive aisle right there and coming out of here.
Are those parking spaces delineated?
They are not on this map. I can put those on the plan, sir.
Are they in physical real form?
No, it's all gravel there. They
Um.
just park where they, typically when I went there the other day, they just parked around the edge. You know?
Because one of the things we have to concern ourselves, especially with buildings of this size, is, somewhere down the line, and hopefully it's super successful, a building that runs through to eternity, but at some point this building might be closed or switch owners, and then you're looking at a lot of issues.
Yeah, Mr. Shea, I would say that even if it changed, you got a different order, they're gonna have to come back in front of this board for a special permit anyway. And as such, they're gonna have to do the parking density based on their use. And there's plenty of room on the site for parking.
Right, I understand he doesn't have a lot of foot traffic in
Mhm.
regards to this, and that also raises, again, the question of, at 200-plus feet setback, why there's a big concern about street frontage.
I think you'll see, Mr. Shea, when we get out there on the site, if you stand here at the entrance, you cannot see back here. But you can see that's where that building would be right there.
Right, I'm familiar with it, and going by at the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, all you're gonna see is the front building, the existing office space, and maybe whatever they have out there for display.
Well, we'll take a look at it. Concom still has to make a decision, too. Any other questions? Andy, do you have any questions?
Andy Glines with Fuss and O'Neill. I guess share the Conservation Commission's and some of the Planning Board members' concerns about the encroachment on the 65-foot buffer. Ultimately defer to the Conservation Commission on that determination. I will say that based on the existing grading and I guess proposed grading, which really isn't changing, although the building encroaches within the 65-foot, stormwater from that building really isn't running in that direction towards that bog. But I would recommend that you take a look at expanding the landscape buffer and maybe even removing some of the existing asphalt gravel along that property line.
You could say a lot, right?
Right, so.
So if I come out another 10 feet as like a mitigation measure?
Yeah.
Because I'd still like, it's 30 feet right now. I'd like to keep it 20 so you can get a drive lane down there.
Right, so if you mirror the 20-foot width, ultimately you'd need Jesse Boyle's approval for the access around that, I think that's reasonable based on
That is
what the
reasonable,
town is, prepared or approved before. So, but I think, increasing the landscape buffer and maybe even adding a grass channel along that property line would alleviate my concerns with the encroachment. I can't say that it would alleviate
Their concerns.
theirs. But I think that's
It's
something
a
to
good
look
strategy.
at. And I guess is there a reason why the showroom couldn't be added to the existing office space out front?
It's just too small. It's an old house. Somebody kind of renovated. There, it's all cut up and wood framed and.
Does, I guess the owner doesn't want to do any addition onto the front office space, so it would
He
get more of a...
hasn't indicated. This
Okay.
is what he wanted me to put in front of the board.
Okay. And I haven't looked at the stormwater design yet, but it doesn't seem like you're expanding the existing basins, but you've assessed those and they can accommodate the
Right.
additional impervious?
What I was doing was going to lower this lip over here because the water in this area doesn't really make it into this infiltration pond. So I was gonna lower the lip so this runoff would come into this pond, and then everything from here back would just continue to go the way it was. And I ran the HydroCAD calcs and everything worked up to the 100 years form, but I didn't have real good detail on the aerial, we drone flight this, and I didn't have a lot of detail down in this corner of edge of bank or top of swale. So it worked during the 2, 10, and 25, but the 100-year was pretty much bank full.
And you're gonna be asphalting in front of the showroom?
Yeah, I have to do that for ADA compliance.
I also have a question as far as the building is concerned. I'd like to see some kind of architectural rendering on the front, especially where it's going to be a showroom. I don't necessarily want it to be exactly the same building as the other one because we've had some problems in town where they just look like boxes. So I would think that the appeal, if it does go through with Concom and you do put the building in this space, that it would be something that was presentable on the front, like a step-out roof or
Something a little
windows,
bit different.
doors,
Break up
something a
that.
little bit different than the front of the other building.
Understood.
With the asphalt paved area on the front of the building, I see you're calling out a paved waterway as also a crushed stone diaphragm. Is the intent, looks like that crushed stone diaphragm to extend around that entire perimeter abutting the...
All the way, yeah, I was gonna run it all the way around, because there's nothing there right now, and I just thought that would be a good feature to remove any of the total suspended solids before it hit the grass filter strip.
I guess I prefer to actually would see an increase in the width of the filter strip as opposed to the crushed stone diaphragm. If you don't need that full radius, I think you have enough room to get the 24-foot wide drive aisle behind the proposed parking spaces.
Right, that's one of the reasons I set that building back a little bit. You wanted them face to face, but I couldn't make it work.
I just, long-term maintenance with those stone diaphragms is always a concern.
Understood. Rather see grass than stone.
Yeah, and I think the filter strip, I guess really the width of the filter strip per the stormwater handbook, I think you'd be able to accommodate it there based on the length of impervious area that would be directed at that area. I'm not saying that the project wouldn't be approved with a crushed stone diaphragm, but I guess if you just take a look at using just a filter strip and upgrading that instead of the stone diaphragm.
And what's it, 25 feet, right? I have to get.
It's actually depending on the length of pavement you have, it could be less, and the slope of the pavement. So if it's less than 2%,
which it is,
then and under 75 feet, then I think a 10-foot filter strip meets the stormwater handbook requirements. So it's possible that
I will
that would
definitely
work
take a
then.
look at that. Thank you.
Will there be a traffic stop in regards to the infiltration basin in front of the stores?
Will there be a what, sir?
Some sort of traffic stop or curbing?
Along here?
Yes.
Oh, there's boulders out there now. But they're probably 15 feet on center, if I was looking at 20 feet.
All right, any other questions? We'll have another look at this. We'll do a site walk. If everybody thinks it's what they would like to do, a site walk at first. Okay. And then, all right.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
You wanted the corners of the building staked prior to the sidewalk?
Yeah, or marked or
Yeah.
painted, yeah, just so that we could see them out in the field, the corners of the building.
Definitely.
And I think, unless, does anybody else want anything else marked out there to see?
That I'd like to see the Concom areas marked. Like they're marked on our site map, but I expect they have to mark them for the Conservation Commission already, so I'd like to
Is that,
remain
so you're looking for the 65-foot
in the 100-foot,
and the 100-foot?
right? You have to mark those for the Conservation Commission anyways.
They haven't asked me for that, no, but I can
No,
mark that for
generally
you
don't.
while we're there.
Yes.
It's literally, another half hour, we could get that done.
Okay.
All right.
Just paint, we'll just probably paint right on top of
That's
the
fine.
gravel.
Yeah,
So time frame for getting that done? So the board can sort of.
I guess
their
weather
site visit?
dependent, hopefully we could get some snow melt here over the next couple days. So I probably could get it done early next week, barring a snowstorm.
Do you want to just let me know when it's set, and I'll communicate with the board about setting up? a
That would
site
be
visit,
perfect.
if that
yeah,
works
we
for
could
you?
do that.
Okay.
We could do that. Yeah,
That'd be
generally
perfect.
we've been doing it at noon time, and I don't know if there's any day that the members can't do that at noon time. Is there a day that you can't do it?
No.
Okay, so at noon time, I'm available anytime, okay. And Rich is usually available pretty much any day.
Usually not Wednesdays, but other than that, I'm okay.
Not Wednesdays.
Right, I'm very tied up till 1 o'clock on Wednesdays.
Okay, so any day except for Wednesday.
And just let me know.
Next week, when you have it done, if you give Tom, the town planner, a call, and then he can email us, and we'll go out and take a look at it. Yeah, it does depend on the weather. Hopefully, we won't get any
Yeah,
more big
hopefully.
storms like we had. But it's easier to put the stakes in the ground when you have 2 or 3 feet of snow, though.
Yeah.
The beam poles, anyway.
I was thinking more of painting the two dimension lines, the buffer lines.
All right, this is a public hearing, so is there anybody out in the audience that would like to have anything to say? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to continue this public hearing for Timeless Stoneworks
Said motion.
to February 22nd at 7 o'clock.
And I'll second it.
Okay, a motion. Okay, so we have a motion and second. We'll do a roll call
Mi-
vote.
Cornelius Shea says aye.
Bruce Mackey, aye.
Kevin Robinson, aye.
Helen Sordillo, aye.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, in our packets tonight, there was an open meeting law violation that we had discussed, I think, at our last hearing, but we didn't vote on, and it was the open meeting law that was presented by John Gatsky. And so I'll, if everybody's read it, I think it was sent out electronically as well as printed. Everybody has a copy in front of them. And so I'd like a motion to authorize town council to draft a response to the open meeting law complaint on behalf of the planning board.
I will so make that motion.
I'll
Cornelius,
second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote.
Cornelius Shea says aye.
Bruce Mackey, aye.
Kevin Robinson, aye.
Helen Sordillo, aye.
Okay. All right. The next thing is planning board member notes. I just want to say that this is the time of the year for elections, and there is a seat open on the planning board, and, well, that seat is ending this spring, and that seat's my seat. And I'm not planning to continue on the planning board, so I'm just announcing this so that maybe somebody out in the community want to apply for the position. I also did inquire at the town clerk's office this morning, and Rich, being our alternate member, could take out papers and run for the full-time position if you wish to do so. So you could take out papers from February 1st to March 3rd. So, but I just want to announce that. I've been on the board for a long time, and I think it's time to pass it on to somebody else. I'll have more to say at my last meeting, but I just wanted to give somebody an opportunity in the community to serve on the planning board. Anybody else have anything to say? All right, we'll go on to planning director notes. And as I announced at the beginning of the meeting, we have a new interim town planner, Tom Bott, and he's had many years of, although he doesn't look it, it's very young, but many years of planning experience. So, and I think he would like to say something to the members tonight.
Yeah, just by way of introduction, I'm Tom Spott, the interim town planner here in Carver, Mass. Most people call me Tom, except for when I'm by my mother when I'm in trouble. I have a serious job to do, but I don't take myself too seriously. I appreciate the confidence the town's shown in me and allowing me to be your interim planner, and I'm very grateful to the permitting department staff. Michelle, Jill, Jen, and our senior citizen volunteer Leslie are excellent, and they've all been extremely helpful. I moved back to Massachusetts after about 30 years. My dad was a Nike missile guy in Rehoboth, Mass., where I enjoyed running through the woods and hopping over stone walls and getting muck all over me from playing in what we now refer to as a bordering vegetated wetland. It was a swamp back then. Those were one of those occasions where I was addressed by my full name when I came home with the bordering vegetated wetland on me. So I've been a planner here for about a quarter of a century, and whether I'm going to be here for 5 weeks or 5 years, I bring to the position, the same perspective and the same processes. I have those requisite skills of a planner. I've got a slightly thicker than average skin and a sense of humor. I don't take sides. I've had both a dog and a cat. So every night when I come home, Miles, my dog, still loves me, and my cat, Sterling, looks at me kind of side-eyed and says, "That's all you got?" The stuff that we do every night is rooted in law, in bylaws and regulations that we're obliged to follow. And when there's ever a question about something in the zoning bylaw, we talk to the building commissioner, because that's what it says in section 5110 in the bylaw. The bylaw will be administered by the building inspector. The planner and the building commissioner typically work very hard to stay on the same page. Paul and I, in fact, didn't have a disagreement until sometime after lunch on my first day. So we're working together on these things. And the stuff that we have, and the process we go through, it's our obligation to follow the process and not ignore it. And if there's things that we don't like and things that need to be changed, and there's always things we don't like, and there's always things that need to be changed, our job is to get out there and figure out what it is and then go out and change it, whether it's a regulation through a planning board hearing or going to town meeting, which is a very long, lead time on things like that. But just sort of, and I've told people all along, I'm not smart enough to know which of the rules they meant and which ones they're kidding about, so I try to touch them all. And when we get in that situation, we're just kind of, blowing things off or not liking how those things work. That's where the term arbitrary and capricious comes in. And that's the reason why people get sued and boards get sued. So you never want to be in a position for your board or your town to be in that sort of situation. Now, fortunately, you guys had a tough run here. There hasn't been anybody in the building. You had a part-time building commissioner forever and ever and ever. So, you know, the benefit of having a full-time building commissioner and hopefully a permanent town planner in short order is gonna make things, you know, easier to figure out, because there's a lot of crazy stuff. There's things that conflict, there's things that don't make sense, like what's up with this? This is the nature of the beast for our business, unfortunately. So, you know, working with the planning board and being in planning, we always know there's a challenge, and no matter how long you've been at it. And so to try to help with some of those things, there are opportunities for training to help sort some of these things out. Some of these complexities, some of these conflicting languages. And as a planner, like a lot of people in their profession, you know, we take continuing ed courses. I'll take a class, a workshop, a webinar, whenever I get a chance to present itself, to keep sharp and for refreshers. And to that effect, Citizens Training Planning Collaborative is an awesome organization here in Massachusetts. There's not a better value on the planet for training and things like that. There's a $20 per session per person cost for training provided by CPTC. It includes, among other things, roles and responsibilities of the planning board and ZBA, introduction to subdivision control and A&R, special permits and variances, use of design review. In fact, there's one coming up on February 24th for that I've never taken, for non-conforming uses that I signed up for today. There's money in the budget to do those sort of things, so if you're interested in them, they're a great take. It's usually an hour and a half on a webinar because they're not doing these things in person. We've got the money in the budget to do those things. One of the other options is that we can contract through CPTC to do a training session here. And I did this in other towns I've worked in, where we have a trainer who comes in, or we do it on Zoom, as the case may be, and sometimes it's a hybrid these days. And it's like $200. And for $200, we get a trainer to come and talk to us, take our direct questions, and I usually invite the neighbors. You know, the neighbors at Planning Board, neighboring Zoning Board of Appeals members, because the things that benefit us also benefit them. And to have your neighbors have their sort of shop in order, you know, is good for us. So as we look forward to those kind of opportunities, there's money in the budget, so we can look at some of those things. I asked for a catalog of all the training sessions they've got. They sent them to me, and I'll be happy to forward those on to you. Because you know, the better we understand things, they're still going to be scratching our heads at times when we look at stuff. But having your staff, having town council, and getting your homework done and asking the planner stuff. And if I know stuff, and I know some stuff, but there's stuff I don't know. And I'll always say, I don't know, and I'll go look it up. Because the last thing I want to do is tell you something and find out that's not really what it is. I work on facts, I work on stuff I can quantify. I don't work on anecdotes. And I like working with people in this kind of stuff, or I would have just quit a long time ago. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me. And looking forward to the time we have to spend together here in Carver.
Thank you, Tom.
So really happy to have you.
Well, thank you.
I think you're just what we needed.
Well, you know, you always want to leave them wanting more, so who knows how long I'll be here. So the other thing I wanted to bring up during the the planning director's report is this horrible memo that I sent you with all these pages and pictures about the MBTA law. So in the Economic Development Act of January 2021 that was signed into law, there's a requirement for the 175 MBTA towns, and Carver is one of them. It's the law, it says you're an MBTA town, that in order to be eligible for and I'll read them off here so I get them right, housing choice initiatives grants, local capital project fund grants, and mass work infrastructure grants, the town has to look at accommodating new zoning for housing. So under the law, Carver would have to create zoning for 750 multifamily units by right, not a special permit. And that's a big hurdle for a lot of folks. Now, for this year, what the town has to do to comply is have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and basically make a presentation to them and say, here's what the law says. The law says you have this thing coming up. There's a form we fill out, we send it in, and we say, we got this, we got that, we had a meeting, and we send it in. And that has us set through 2023. I've reached out to various departments and committees and asked, are you using these kind of grants and things like that? So whether the town wants to enter into looking at zoning for things like that or not is the town's choice. My choice is, my role is to bring it to your attention that we need to get this thing, then we need to get it done, this meeting with the select people by May 2nd. So I touched base with the town administrator about looking at some dates and things like that. So we'll likely put something together for this beforehand, to have the meeting with the select board and say, here's what the law is, here's what the things you gotta do. We check the box, we send in the form, and we're good for a year as far as being eligible for those grants. After that, you have to create zoning in order to be eligible for those. So that's the report on.
What does the MBTA have to do with that?
The Economic Development Bill created a new section of Chapter 48, Section 3, that says, unless you have this kind of zoning in your town, in these 175 MBTA towns that were identified in the legislation, you can't apply for these grants. That's what the law says.
I was reading it a couple weeks ago, but I honestly only kind of half digested it because we don't have any MBTA in this town. We have the Kingston line and 7 or 8 miles away, and the proposed middle borough line. So I didn't really look at it, but the one thing I did notice that at 15 units per acre density, this town just does not have the infrastructure to handle that kind of development, and I wouldn't know how we'd. And so at the time I dismissed it as like, oh, well, Carver doesn't have to worry about it. But I mean, we have the public water supply, which is going to be maxed out in all likelihood with the development of the RDA properties in North Carver, but no public septic and limited public water. How would we comply with it?
Yeah, the zoning calls for a 50-acre parcel minimum at 15 units per acre. That's how they get to 750 units. 15 units per acre on a 50-acre site, 750 units. For the most part, when you're building something of that sort of density, that comes with a package plan. So if someone was going to build it, it would likely be, a larger sort of development, and they went and they created a water system for that area and a package treatment plant that went with it. But with that comes a price tag. And everything in development comes back with, do we get our money back? So somebody who looks at this thing goes, let's say, Andy's a developer. Sorry, Andy, I'm going to throw you under the bus. And he's like, okay, I could build 750 units of housing in Carver because, I think they'd want that. That's what developers say. Sorry, Andy. So the developer has to look at, okay, I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to have to do all this stuff. Can I get the rent out of these units to pay for all that stuff? And if you can't, then you're not going to, irregardless of what the zoning says. So the law requires you to have the zoning, but does the market put you in a position to create the development? That's an unknown. And there's a lot of towns that are going to be out there in the same boat. I mean, Ashburnham. I looked it up on the map. It's on the map. I'm like, Ashburnham, it's a town. Over there. Are they going to look at, let's knock out 750 units of housing somewhere out here? For a lot of places, they're going to say, we'll create the zoning knowing nobody's ever going to build anything here. But if you create the zoning, they could come. And if they come, they've got to put that infrastructure in. And to put that infrastructure in, they got to be able to get the rents back out of it to pay for it. And in most of these instances, you're going to have an affordable component to it. So whether it's 40R or those type of developments, if you're putting something together like this, you're going to have a requirement for those affordable units, which are desperately needed. So in addition to just looking at those 750 units, people are going to know that out of those 750 units, only 75% are being market rate. So the logistics, the math that goes into the developer making that decision is in their court. But as far as the law goes, if for this year, we have a meeting, we fill out a form, we send it in, we're eligible for the grants. After next year, we see what the town decides to do.
Now, is it 50 continuous acres?
Yep.
And undeveloped, or is not specified? So it could be a neighborhood, existing neighborhood area? Or
so if, in the role of the MBTA coordinator that DHCD is hiring for is to look at those things and say, did somebody put together zoning that's sort of gaming the system? So if you got a 50-acre site and there's single-family houses in there, or is there ability to create that sort of development in the area? Obviously, in places where there are higher rents, I lived in Atlanta for years, and in Atlanta, neighborhoods were bounding together to put together packages for developers so they could take their, their houses, their suburban houses to create shopping centers and things like that. So there's sometimes this redevelopment where people come in and do an assembly. But if you've got, 30 property owners around, and how do you do an assemblage for 30 property owners to make that sort of thing happen? So like I said, there's a lot of, levers and things that go into that. And are they feasible? Are they possible? Who knows? When we look at the TDR bylaw, and we look at those TDR sending areas and receiving areas, those are the sort of things you go, well, is there a TDR component to this? Will we try to do something like that? So that's the part of my day job that's, a bit more exciting than just looking at the catch basin. No offense, Ian. As an engineer now, not as a developer, is going, well, that thing's in the wrong spot. So, this is the kind of interesting stuff that we get into on a pretty regular basis. How do we try to create those sort of things? But, zoning's tough. A 2/3 vote for lots of different things, but one of the components of this housing bylaw as well is a zoning that reflects housing is now 50% plus one. So if you were going to try to create housing, zoning for housing, whatever kind of housing it is, it's not 2/3 vote at town meeting now, it's 50% plus one. So it's lowered the threshold. So we'll see. As soon as I have a confirmed date for when we're going to do this, I'll let everybody know. I'll go to the select people, I'll tell them the story, we'll check the box, we'll send in the form, and then we got a year to figure out what we're going to do next.
Thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Interesting, very interesting.
That wouldn't mean that we'd have to bring the MBTA to Carver, correct?
The green line's not coming to Carver, I can tell you that. So,
Thank God.
Suburban buses, what benefits a bus line is density. Trying to run a bus through Carver, and I drove through Carver today. I went down to and I've been driven through Carver a lot, but I drove to the on-site visits. There's not a lot of pickup spots on all those cranberry bogs in the middle of the place. So density is what benefits a bus line. So if you got to try to run a bus line that's going to take an hour to get somewhere, that's you're never going to get the fares right. Never going to get on it. I watched something on Twitter the other day. These planner nerds in Pittsburgh rode the world's craziest bus route in Pittsburgh. They were very proud of it. It was a 2.5-hour ride from one end to the other end, and this is around suburban Pittsburgh. And there's a lot of stuff going on around the place. Sort of went from one dead mall to another dead mall and stuff in between. So, will the MBTA come here? Well, you'll probably go there. Middleborough, Kingston, but I don't see, having a lot of those bus shelters around Carver for the time being.
Well, we do have a 50,000 unit build out in the town, so eventually, there will be buses in the area. Hopefully there'll be hover buses or, from the Jetsons.
All right, thank you. Next, we have, on discussion, I passed out a harassment policy that everybody has to sign. I think pretty much everybody signed it except for Richard. And if you could just pass that on to me later tonight.
Yep.
And I'll give that to Tom. All right, so we have, I think in our packets, and they've been sent to us electronically, the minutes. And I'll go to, so we have I'll just start with the first one. We have the minutes of 12/14/21. Yeah, we have to get some of these done tonight because.
Cornelius Shea will make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, we could just say yea or nay on these, I guess. Those in favor, please to approve the minutes of 12/14/21. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So then we have the minutes of 12/28/21.
Cornelius Shea makes a motion to approve the minutes of 12/28/21.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. And then, did everybody see the minutes of January 11th, 2022? Did everybody receive those?
I have those.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, I didn't find mine this afternoon, but I got them later on tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 11th, 2022.
Cornelius Shea votes aye.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second.
Oh, Cornelius Shea makes the said motion.
Makes the motion, okay. And then Ellen second. All right. So those in, okay, further discussion? Okay, those in favor, please say aye.
Cornelius Shea says aye.
Aye. All right, opposed? Okay, 4-0. Okay, then we have the minutes of January 25th, 2022.
I did ask for,
Some changes
right, the way the votes were
that they
written
made.
was, everything was like 3-0 and 2 or 4-0. Whether it was abstained or a yay or nay, it didn't matter. It was kind of confusing. I just asked for clarification. I hadn't seen if they were, Michelle said she put them in, but I didn't get an updated copy in regards to it.
Do you want to take a look at it now?
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about it in the office today, that 401 is someone voting to abstain.
Yes,
That's right.
Right,
That's
but
what it was,
all
yeah.
the votes were 3-0 and 2, 4-0. The 0 automatically went in the middle of it, so I just wanted that clarified.
See, we're looking at January 25th. I don't know if these have those corrections on them or not.
See, this one doesn't have it yet, right? Because it says, for instance, John Gasky votes nay, approved 4-0 and 1.
What page are you on?
It should, pardon?
What page are you on?
Oh, I was on the first page, on the very first paragraph. 4 votes aye, John Gasky votes nay, and it was 4-0 and 1, but it was like that for all of them.
Okay, so it should be 410, not 4.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I sent the corrections over, and I just asked her to update it, but other than that, it was fine. Oh, and...
So was it just in that one particular spot?
No, it was on, for almost all of them, and then...
Do you want to make those
I
corrections
sent them
here?
over.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Oh, you
if-
did, okay.
If I, yeah. And then on section 10, it says refer to section 10, and I just thought that was not, necessary to fix that. It was more about clarifying all the voting issues. So-
Okay. So do you,
No, I sent them over to Michelle.
okay.
She said she'd take care of them, so, but I saw that they're not
So
on
do you
there,
want
so.
to vote on this tonight, or do you want to table it, or
Can we
do you want?
table it?
Yeah, okay, we can table it till the next, yeah, until those corrections are done. All right.
Could we vote on that, or?
No, we'll
Okay.
just table it, and then we'll vote on it.
Thank you on that.
All right, so at least we got 1, 2, 3 done. All right, entertain a motion for adjournment.
Cornelius Shea so makes that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, Kevin, second. All right, we'll just do voice. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.